Hello and welcome to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and I'm delighted to have with me today Marisol Garcia, who is a member of the Middlesex Community College class of 2021. Actually finished her degree in December of 2020, but graduated with us in 2021. Thanks for being with us today, Marisol.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, Marisol, you are now a student at Trinity College, so you went from Middlesex to Trinity. How was that transition for you?
It was a very interesting transition because, again, it was in the midst of COVID, and I had done the pathway of the MAP program here at Middlesex, so it was very different. It was kind of one of those, it was a slow down progression. So going to class, online and then sometimes on campus, but going from a course load of like 7 to 8 classes a semester for the prior year to then being advised to do 2 classes to acclimate myself was kind of a very big adjustment for me. And, it was a little, and then also the type of professors I had. I think it was, being a student with the Middlesex and the Center for Prison Education student and that partnership, I've had the opportunity of having professors from Middlesex and Wesleyan both, and it's a very different transition. Mm-hmm. Professors, again, we have professors at Trinity that come from all over the place, from all over the country, and it's a very different teaching style. So again, coming from online education, different professors. So it was a bit of an adjustment period, but by the summer I was already on my way. Mm-hmm. I made the decision at that point when Trinity changed their graduation policies to accelerate my education, even though I had been advised differently. I was like, you know what, let's, at my age, because I'm almost 45, I'm not literally a non-traditional student in many ways. Yeah. One being a formerly incarcerated individual who graduated through the CPE and Middlesex partnership to then going into Trinity. And I'm not exactly 20 years old, 21. I was like, I can't not work. I have to work. And being in school full time was not really an option. So I made the decision to work, but I made a path and a plan where I'm going to now graduate in May of 2022 with a degree in public policy and law.
That's amazing. And you have a lot in your future, but let's talk a little bit about your past, because I think when we were talking off mic before we started, you said, let's just rip the Band-Aid off, and you put it out there. You were a student who was previously incarcerated, and you came to Middlesex through our program with Wesleyan. And how did you first learn about that program, the Center for Prison Education?
So at York Correctional, they had 3 different programs. So there is the Wesleyan program, the Trinity Quinnipiac program, and then as well as the Three Rivers program, which was open to students. Now, I had taken previously classes at Three Rivers, but I was too late to apply for the Wesleyan cohort because I had already done so. So I wasn't able to do so the first time around. So instead, I went through the Trinity Quinnipiac cohort. I started there, and then within the year, Wesleyan decided to do another cohort and slid right in. Mm-hmm. And so I started that summer actually with Professor Hammond's math class. And actually, I believe that fall, I had Professor Tad Lincoln, who was my economics professor, while I was incarcerated, mm-hmm. which ironically, he and I did not see eye to eye. We had I had a different learning style. He had a very different teaching style. Okay. So again, this is what speaks to the relationships that when I was incarcerated, I did not fully appreciate the lessons and his piece of advice, because he said, you will eventually get it. You may not get it now, but give me the time. You will see at the end. Because I kept saying to him, we're not passing this class. This is not going to work. Mm-hmm. The way you teach is not something that we can actually adapt to. He was accustomed to teaching students, who were econ majors. People who are formerly who are incarcerated, that's not a major that's open. We have a lot of humanities that we do. So this was a different major for, a different class for some of us. And his way of teaching was very different. However, in the end, he does have a point. Methodically does end up proving right. And ironically, once I left prison, Professor Lincoln was one of my biggest supporters and one of my biggest advocates and resources while I went from being incarcerated to when I came home and I was on campus and in classes. He was amazing. He was a great resource. I can't speak highly enough of him. Same thing with Dan McGloin, he was the academic planner for the Center for Prison Education. They were outstanding resources for support just navigating, getting back into school. So I didn't lose the touch from being in the classroom while I was incarcerated to being out here because, once you're released, you have all these daily things coming at you. And it was a difficult acclimation for me. However, with the support of, again, the staff I had here at Middlesex, it was, some would say easy. It wasn't, but it was a good transition. And again, Professor Lincoln and several other of my professors were very helpful in getting scholarships. They wrote recommendations for me. They've also written a lot of my college recommendations when I was doing for my undergrad at Trinity and other places. So again, I can never speak highly enough of my professors here.
Okay, great. Well, we have a lot to explore and a lot more coming after the break. So more with Marisol Garcia, a student foremost. We have a lot more to explore, and we will do so after the break. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College here on WLAS WMRD.
Middlesex Community College offers more than 70 degree, certificate, and lifelong learning programs on its 35-acre campus in Middletown and online, or even during high school. It is home to the Center for New Media, which offers Applied Associate of Science degrees in Digital Media Production, plus Associate of Arts degrees in Graphic Design and Communication. Middlesex has the only ophthalmic design and dispensing program in the state, with an eyeglass clinic open to the public. An honors program and a robust manufacturing program round out the offerings at Middlesex.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, together with my guest, Marisol Garcia, who is a member of Middlesex Community College's class of 2021, now a student at Trinity College, seeking her degree in public policy. And we were talking before a little bit about the transition, and Marisol, you've had a number of significant transitions in your life.
Yes. Yes, I have.
And we were talking before the break how you'd started your college experience with Middlesex through our Center for Prison Education program,
Yes.
when you were incarcerated at York Correctional Institution. But you came to Middlesex on ground after being released, and you were in our accelerated program. So you were significantly feeling, it sounds to me like, making up for lost time.
Yes. Time is something that has not been on my side. One, because of how old I am and how much time, when prison does take, mass incarceration does rob you of time. It's, with time with family, time of education. And again, reacclimation is very important. Reentry is very important. And I think the relationships I made through the Center for Prison Education and then those I made here when I came to Middlesex were very vital in my transition back into society. I've had professors like Christine Ruggiero, I've had professors like Tad Lincoln, both when he was a professor for me on the inside, but also due to the fact that he was such a big support since I've been home in, navigating like internships and even like when I was picking classes for my political science degree, as well as I had a professor, Richard Patrick, who was very instrumental in when I was taking my political science classes, that actually helped me finish up my associates in political science. And he was also very big. And when I was making the transition to Trinity as well, in order of picking my major of public policy, which I have a concentration in public policy and law with law and society, actually. Mm-hmm. And being that I've had such great professors here, they've carried over into my academics from Middlesex to Trinity.
Yeah, one of the things you were talking about with me before the break was just how outstanding the academic experience was. And I think there's a lot of value in vocational type of training that colleges do in prisons, but this is something different. This is a liberal arts focus that really prepares students like you for critical thinking and careers beyond the walls of prison. And you've got a lot of plans for the future.
Absolutely.
But a lot of it tags back to the coursework that you had with Middlesex and Wesleyan professors.
Yes. I've done so many different classes. We've done things with philosophy, with political science, with political history. We've done certain things like that. And then actually one of the things that I do remember most was we had a professor. He actually, I don't believe, came through Middlesex. However, he was affiliated. It was a race seminar that we had done in the spring. And it was a very interesting 3-day class that was done through Wesleyan while I was incarcerated. And I've had the privilege of working with him again since then. And that's actually been one of my other focuses, that I've spoken with Professor Ruggiero as well as Dr. Hernandez here at Middlesex, that they have been very focal in now as I transition out of, finishing up my undergrad, which, yes, I've done at an accelerated pace that most people would not advise to do. Enjoy your classes. However, I think being as old as I am and also being a non-traditional, formerly incarcerated student, it's a necessity. I've got to get back to life, and I've got to make sure that I'm contributing and staying in compliance where I stay at a difficulty and I don't end up right back in, inside.
Yeah.
So they've been very instrumental. And now, as I'm narrowing down my focus, for public policy as a master's program, I'm looking to focus on like health advocacy or health policy. And then I'm looking to go on to law school from there.
Yeah, so you're sort of on a fast track for
Yes.
with a program at Yale University. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that's like?
So again, these are the resources that we have. I had found out about the program from Dan McLoyne from the Center for Prison Education. He had gotten an email back in the summer of 2020. And this is when I was in the process of, Dr. Levy had said to me, you need to leave now. It's time for you to graduate. So I was in the process of preparing, college applications. And I said, I wasn't thinking to add another thing onto my plate. But Dan's like, this is a strong possibility for you. And it was a program the Yale Law School had done, a pilot program to prep underrepresented communities, those who have been formerly incarcerated, those who have had difficulty in getting into college in the first place, whether it's a racial background, socioeconomic background. So, I did the interview, I did essays, and the only reason I wasn't a part of that first cohort, actually, they accepted me even into the second cohort because I wasn't ready to graduate at that time. I had just graduated from Middlesex, and I said, I had time. And the next thing you know, they were like, well, we'd like to offer you a place into the following year because we have, you're not ready to graduate yet. So then that kind of became another catalyst to, okay, let's get me going. So then I ended up doing that, and it's a program that Yale does where they prepare you for your college applications. They prepare you for the LSAT. So we have it's a 2-year-long fellowship. And now I started it my senior year. So we have Saturday Academy that gives you how to prepare your personal statement, your diversity statements, how to frame it and to make it work for you, and like how you're telling a story and how to make sure everything lines up well. And I think the biggest component is the assistance we get for the LSATs. Right. So with the LSATs, we have individual programs that run on a Sunday. And we meet with our mentors who are normally second or third year law students at Yale who help us, to make sure that we keep everything reasonable and balanced so we're not doing too much. And so ironically, our first attempt at the LSAT is next June. Oh, so right after graduation, it's prepping for the LSATs. However, the program does recommend that you take it multiple times. So we have another one. So we have one in June, another one in September, and I think another one in December to give you the opportunity to, in case you need to up your LSAT score, and it walks you through the process. We are ready next September to do our applications for law school.
Gotcha. Wow, that's an awful lot. And like you said, trying to make up for lost time in many ways. You did do a little bit of college before the CPE programs,
yes.
But basically finished that in about 2 years,
yeah.
right? Considering that when you were inside, you could only take 2 classes at a time.
Well, it's funny. When I started through the Trinity Quinnipiac cohort, they only offered 1 class.
Oh, okay.
So then at that point, that's one of the reasons I wanted to go to Wesleyan, because they offered more challenging classes. But then when I got into Wesleyan, it was as they always is the first year, they always recommend, we don't know what you're academically capable of, so we recommend you take 2 classes. So I remember nagging Dan McLoyne during the entire time. I was prepping before I even started the program, and up until that first, and he's like, no, and he wouldn't budge on it because he's like, you need to see. And again, Dan has served as like one of the most vital advocates for me. He's actually my mentor as I walk this path between Middlesex, Trinity, and as I go on to graduate school after that, and then law school. As I said to him, I said, once you've done this, you're serving as a representative for those that have been incarcerated, as well as a student as the Center for Prison Education, a Middlesex alum. And he's like, you're making the pathway for those that are coming after you, and you have to behave in a model of decorum. So I do everything I can. Because again, when Dan and I first met, that was not always necessarily the case. I would challenge him on any circumstance. And I would start off with my spiel of, Dan, you're just not understanding where I'm coming from. And he's like, Dan, like a lot of the professors I've had here at Trinity are, no, let me be more specific. Professor Lincoln. Mm-hmm. Because again, you don't appreciate what you have until the lessons, and whether or not you want to hear it, sometimes you need to have someone who is able to tell you the truth. Yep. And to guide you, and you cannot go shooting off and say, well, I can do this. Take a minute. Right. And, I've learned that my professors are very big catalysts for that.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've maintained sort of your sense of direction and your sense of purpose and your devotion to what you feel is right for you, yes. But at the same time being able to temper that somewhat with yes. a little dose of, I hate to say dose of reality,
yeah,
but
it's the truth.
Oh, okay.
It's the truth. Because sometimes I can believe that I'm right,
yeah.
And it's one of those where, I think being a part of a marginalized group, you want to make decisions for yourself, but sometimes trying to reinvent the wheel is not a necessity. Yeah. And I've learned with Dan, Dan and Professor Lincoln, specifically Dan more or less this last year has been where I need to be careful about taking on too much, because of the reality of coming back into transitioning from, prison back into the real world. Mm-hmm. And then from that, trying to maintain academics as well as a life, because I have, I'm married, I have, a home, I work, and it's difficult. But sometimes if you ask me, how do I hold it together? As I said to Dan, I don't stop moving, because if I do, I may or may not fall apart, and I can't look back, because if I do again, I might pause and say I can't do it. I don't put that limitation on myself, because everybody tells you can't do something. I'm one of those that I prove the odds quite different.
Okay.
Very different.
Now, because you have that belief in yourself, I think that's hugely important to you, but have you been able to translate that belief to others? Have you taken on a mentoring role to other students who may have been incarcerated, or just maybe younger students who see you as a role model who's, here's a woman who is able to keep it all together, and I want to be like her?
That's exactly what my goal is. I'm very big on, I don't want to say publicizing, but I'm very honest in that conversation, where whenever I hear students, those who have not only those that have been incarcerated, but those that are outside, they're in the marginalized, whether it's through race, socioeconomic, they don't believe they can do something. And I turn around and I say to people, don't ever say that, because you know what? If you had looked at my life less than 2 or 3 years ago, I was sitting in prison, and who would have thought that here I am about to graduate my senior year, looking at possibility of going on to law. No, not possibility. The definite the opportunity of going on to law school. It's just a matter of where.
That's right.
And I believe there's nothing you can't put your mind to and accomplish. I really strongly, firmly believe that. And I have the tendency of, I bring that energy, and I make sure that I kind of impart it within, my community, or, even the girls who I used to mentor when I was in prison through the Worth program. I did that. But I also, like a lot of the girls or women, I should say, not girls, who are coming home now, who have been incarcerated for a long period of time. Sometimes people don't think they can do something, because again, when you're incarcerated, your rights are taken away from you. You're not able to do certain things, and your individuality is taken away. You're a statistical number, and that's all they want you to believe that, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. And I've done a recent narrative piece where I said, everybody said that I was only supposed to be known as inmate 341916. And I'm like, no, I'm Marisol, and that's who I am, and this is where I am, this is where I'm going, and no one's going to deter me from that path. Because I remember when someone said, you're only going to be the number that you are, and I remember the correctional staff that told me this, and I remember coming back at him saying, one day you're going to have to call me Dr. Garcia. And well on that way.
Awesome.
Well on that way.
Wow. Well, we do have to take a short break right now, and when we come back, more with my guest, Marisol Garcia. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College here on WLIS WMRD.
Discover your potential at Middlesex Community College. Have these times of uncertainty found you unemployed or looking for a career change? Do you want to start a career as unique as you but aren't sure how to get started? The time is now. Middlesex Community College offers affordable options for a high-quality education. Conveniently located in the cities of Middletown, Meriden, and online, your path is straightforward and easy. Middlesex Community College. Your college. Your future.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and I've been having a delightful conversation with Marisol Garcia, who's a member of the Middlesex Community College class of 2021, is now a student at Trinity College in Hartford, and is a future law school student. We've been talking about Marisol's background and her educational trajectory. And one of the things we haven't yet talked about, Marisol, is your gift as a writer. And you were actually at Middlesex Community College a couple of weeks ago hosting a workshop. And tell us how you got into creative writing. You've really been recognized for this part of your...
I have actually, when I was incarcerated, I actually did a residency with Wally Lamb. Actually, I had been a part of his residency twice. For one, the first time for a longer period of time. Second time much shorter because I ended up coming home in 2019. I ended up, and what kind of rekindled my interest is I had taken a class with Professor Christine Rosario, who, kind of, I think, relit the passion I had for writing. And, because again, once you get back into school, everything's so academic, it's a very different creative process. And one of the things that we were touching on was, again, social justice. That kind of has become a very big theme. Wally has written books, throughout the residency with some of the women at York that have highlighted some of the issues of mass incarceration, their personal, traumas and things like that. And that's kind of something that I've kind of brought to the seminar that I was doing myself here, except it's not the prison you build, but it's kind of freeing yourself and how do you come away. So like our first seminar that we did a theme called Silver Boxes, and we were looking to what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give yourself or your future self. And with positive or negative, because sometimes, you learn something, or someone could have said something to you and you take something completely different away from it. So it was a very emotional, very eye-opening experience because we covered issues with, self-worth. We covered issues of, domestic violence. We've covered a lot of different issues, and even Dr. Hernandez and Professor Rosario, they're sharing as well as my own. You never know when you walk into something like that again. You never know what it will reveal, and it's very interesting how, creative writing opens that process. If you remember, we did our own social justice project ourselves last year, and each experience is something different. Each experience is a kind of, for someone like myself, and I think a lot of people who've done creative writing, especially those who've been incarcerated, it gives you an opportunity to find that voice that you thought you lost. Because most, with mass incarceration, you're stripped away to it's not even your most fundamental self. You're stripped away of your identity. You're stripped away of everything. So sometimes your creative writing is the only thing you have left. Mm-hmm. That is the one thing they can't take away. And don't get me wrong, they did try to do that numerous times where they challenged the program at York with Wally, not once, maybe at least 2 to 3 times throughout the 20 years that he has been teaching the residency. And even now, sometimes people don't want to hear what you have to say because they think it impugns, the image of certain things. But again, you can't take away someone's rights to have their own voice. And creative writing, I think, provides the ability for us to be able to speak sometimes about things that we may not be ready to speak about, or it pauses, it sparks some healing that you didn't even know that maybe you needed or that is a long time coming. Right.
And it's healing for yourself and perhaps healing for others, too, who respond to your writings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the piece that we overlapped a little bit on was a project that we did last February called Participation, Access, Rights, and Equity, or PAIR. And you contributed a poem entitled The Greatest Show on Earth.
Yes.
Let's take a listen to that for a moment.
Yes. Greatest show on earth. Welcome to the correctional circus. Send in the state-certified babysitters. Prepare for the role that you will play. Inmate, offender, felon. Sit back in your seat and prepare as the curtains rise. In come the animals, shackled side by side. A pathetic Noah's Ark, disheartened, shuffle through the metal detector doors. Leave your identity. They will strip you of the rest. Front row be damned. Center stage it is. Assemble all your belongings in a plastic bag to be carried home. All at your expense. Bureaucratic nickel-diming begins. Fill out forms for items you will never see again. Like the piece of your soul. Folded into a compressed minuscule piece, forever creased. Strip away all modesty. No such thing exists. Bend, spread, cough. Your shame for the world to see. Lower, wider, until they see pink. Prodded and herded like cattle. Many mutters. Felons are a burden to the state. An eyesore, a stain. A strain to the social conscious. Inmate, offender, felon. Performers in the greatest show on earth.
So Marisol, the poem that you contributed to the PAIR project we just heard, I mean, that was a pretty strong allegory for what it's like to be inside, isn't it? Yeah. And how you felt you were treated.
You know, again, incarceration is a different experience for different people. Again, you know, whether you're coming in as a young person, if you were like 14, 15, getting incarcerated, or even when I was incarcerated in my 20s, and, you know, in the latter part of my 30s, it's a different experience where it meets you where you're at. They say prison is the greatest equalizer because, again, that's where you're stripped away of everything. And when I was first incarcerated, it's a very big assault on your sense of self because you're brought in, all your personal effects are taken away from you, and you're made to strip in front of people and shower in front of people who, you know, the most humiliating is when you have to strip and you have to bend and cough, and, you know, they are very... There are no words to describe the process, you know, unless you've gone through it. It's a very intrusive, very traumatic experience. And it makes you feel like you're nothing but an animal being herded through a paddock, you know, you're stripped down, you're washed down, and it's like, okay, now you're going into the masses, and they just tag you and release you into the wild, if you will. And then there you are in the jungles of prison. And again, prison can be... You don't come off of an incarceration period without some trauma that I think for every person is different. And for myself, I did not have the luxury of not being able to reacclimate back into society. And it was an ordeal. There are some days where the senses are assaulted with too many people, too much noise, you know. And again, everybody's experience is different. It's having like a severe, living through a case of PTSD, and so many different things. Mm-hmm. But I knew I had no other alternative. So one of the things I did is I started preparing myself while I was inside for my release. And I took every reentry program for resume, you know, work, everything I could do, I did to prepare myself to return. And writing was one of my outlets where I made sure that I did my resume. And I remember I would talk to Wally or some of the volunteers who were coming in from the outside to make sure that I had an outlet for those moments. And writing was like the biggest outlet for me.
So it sounds like your experiences, as difficult as they were, you know, they're very obviously strong memories that you have, and that's part of who you are, but it really sets you up for a much brighter future, it sounds like to me. And you've got a lot of that plotted out, and you've done a lot of planning toward that and are truly activating that.
Absolutely.
So where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? What if I interviewed Marisol in the year 2031?
Yeah, right. Let's just age me any more than what I am already.
Me too, yeah.
It's already, I'm laughing because by the time I get my law degree, I will be just hitting almost 49, almost 50 by the time I get my law degree.
Okay, so you and I are sitting down in the future talking about retirement.
Yes. Wait, for you, maybe not quite. I'll still be hitting my stride at that point. I got another 30 years. I'll be retiring at 90. You know, you'll be you'll be talking behind me, and as I'm trying to hold the mic, and be like, "Not so fast, Minkler, not so fast." Where do I see myself? So I see myself we'll go in 5 years. It'll be just finishing up law school. If we're going for 10, it will be as a professor. And it will probably be, ideally it would be finishing up undergrad, teaching undergrad students. My end goal, where I'd like to sit on my laurels, if you will, would be teaching law school. But also another big component is advocacy. I find that, probably after graduation and while I'm in law school, I will probably be doing work with a lot of social justice organizations like VERA or the SAGE Center at Yale for public policy, or even doing something like that even on Trinity's campus. Because I've done work with the Center for Prison Education for reentry, and I'm looking to kind of maintain that same, trajectory, where I think bringing awareness for those who are still incarcerated or once they are released, making sure that there is a pipeline of support, because I think people, once they leave prison, they get so... men and women are different, but I will speak for women, where I think women get so engulfed in trying to make amends for the fact that they were away for so long, that they now have to make time up for their children, a significant other, family. They have to prove themselves again and again because they've, let people down. So now people don't always, when you're incarcerated, that's the time you have for yourself. And sometimes people take that time, but then they stop doing that once they're released. I made that a priority, that I refuse to put myself in second place. My husband, unfortunately, is one that pays the price for that numerous times. Because as I said to him, you're going to have to wait until I'm done with law school before we go anywhere or do anything. Yep. But I think serving as a source of guidance and support for those that have been formerly incarcerated, specifically for women, and bringing awareness, I think, to the ill effects and the lack of preparation and what we need to do for the policy in respect to that. Is a big part of, where I look to be in 10 years. Okay. I laugh, though there is no formal doctor title that goes with your JD. I will be Dr. Garcia, whether or not it's with an EDD or with my JD alone. I definitely will be that.
Well, JD is a Juris Doctor.
It is, yes. Yeah. But again, there is a difference between, your doctor such and such
right, yeah.
and otherwise.
True. So would you, so if teaching is in your future, would you ever see yourself teaching in a program like the Center for Prison Education?
Absolutely.
You would? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, I would. I actually am looking to see, I'm speaking maybe out of turn, but at Trinity, I would love to bring, if not something similar to the Center for Prison Education, make something a little more firm at Trinity that's something similar to the Center for Prison Education. Okay. Because that's Wesleyan's, partnership with Middlesex. I would like to see something like that on Trinity's campus, because I think Trinity being where it is right in the center of Hartford, a lot of the incarcerated population comes home, and sometimes they don't think to go back to school, and they don't think somewhere like Trinity even is an option, so.
So do you think that because Connecticut seems to have a pretty huge head start with a lot of these programs, the Wesleyan Middlesex program was one of 4 what are called second chance Pell programs, that Connecticut might have this chance to really form a strong network of colleges and universities who want to participate?
Yes, I think that's an option. I think it's not. I think right now we're still in our infancy stage, because I think, though programs like the Center for Prison Education is already set up, and then Yale has their own Yale Prison Initiative that's underway, schools like Trinity and Quinnipiac and other places don't have a firm foothold, because again, financing is not what it is. That money is not that easy to get, and places are lucky when they not lucky, they do the work to get grants or to get some type of funding for it. So it's again just doing the legwork in order to make that happen.
Sure. And even though these programs do occur in prisons, we have a very important partner in the Department of Correction, and there's only so many slots for programs like Centers for Prison Education and others inside the prisons, that I think they would be reluctant to have this huge growth in programming unless they can be assured that everything was done with a certain level of quality and adherence to their rules and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that can be done, because it's something that's currently done. I think it's just taking the model and maybe expanding on it. And then, again, it's the component of, it's not just those that are incarcerated, it's once they're released, because you do have a generation now that those who've been incarcerated for 20 plus, almost 30 years, they're now leaving, and you want to make sure they're coming back in as productive members of society. You do not want the same cycle to repeat itself, even though people, and education is the way to go.
Sure. So on that note, maybe the final question I have for you before we run out of time is, you have served as a mentor to many younger students, and maybe just your best piece of advice for a student who's trying to seek what their next chapter is in life.
The best piece of advice: stay true to who you are, but be open to adjusting what that plan can look like. Because I think, and I can be guilty of this myself, where I was very firm that I'm going to law school, I'm going to be a lawyer, or, prior to this opportunity I've had, this is what I was going to do. However, I have learned to temper my vision and my plan, because you know what? If I were 21, I would say law school is a given. Mm-hmm. But I'm not 21, I'm almost 45. So I am not going to set the legal world on fire as an attorney. I am going to do it a little differently as a law professor, as a legal advocate, as well as a incarceration, post-incarceration activist for those who are still behind and those who are trying to find their way. So I think it's keeping yourself, being able to go with the flow and to be able to tweak and adjust your plans, because you never know what road it's going to bring you. And you never know, you might meet someone like yourself who may say to you, well, have you ever thought of this? Mm-hmm. And that opens up a whole new different avenue and opportunities for you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Marisol Garcia, Middlesex Community College class of 2021, former student in the Center for Prison Education, current student at Trinity College, and future law school student and professor and lawyer.
Yes.
Bright future ahead of you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And many thanks to all of you, our listeners, for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. As always, you can visit us in person, and remember to wear a face mask if you do. Our main campus is located at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown. Or you can also see us at our Meriden Center, located at Platt High School, where we offer afternoon and evening classes 4 days a week. And of course, you can visit us online 24/7 at mxcc.edu. For everyone at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we'll see you next week.